Welcome to the Bright Ideas Podcast, where we share bold insights and real stories for people leaders building cultures and companies that scale. I'm your host, Desiree Booker-Sharpe, keynote speaker and CEO of Color Vision Lab. We're the people and culture consulting firm helping creative businesses design smarter systems and build high-performing teams. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest, Juliette Dupre, Chief People Officer at OtherSide Entertainment. If you want to scale your business without sacrificing your culture, this is the conversation for you. And if you're exploring ways to elevate your people strategy, DM us the word growth on LinkedIn for a free consultation. Juliette, how are you? Welcome to the show.
Hi, it's so great to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm doing great.
Absolutely. We are so excited to have you here today and excited to jump into our conversation. So first, would you mind sharing a little bit more about your journey into kind of the people strategy world? How did you get into this work?
Sure. So, as you mentioned, I'm the Chief People Officer at OtherSide Entertainment. We are a video game development company. But I started my career actually in a law firm down in New Orleans, where I was born and raised, as a litigation paralegal working in product liability and employment law. Eventually, after many years with the firm, I had an opportunity they identified me for to transition into the role of director of legal recruiting, which in a law firm context means ownership of the attorney recruitment, the summer law clerk program, and sort of associated recruitment programming. And I found that I really loved that work. I felt I could have an impact on the future of the firm. I felt that my litigation paralegal work sort of translated well to being able to speak to attorneys and future attorneys in a way that was useful to recruitment for them. And also, I started to feel that I was interested in transitioning those skills to a different industry outside of law a little bit, exploring science, technology, engineering, math related areas. And that's how I found myself in games, where I was a recruiter for many years. What developed from that was realizing that as you're recruiting people and bring them into roles, at least for me, I wanted to have more agency over the experience they then had that I had sort of teed them up for and make sure that that was a great experience in the workplace as well. So I started also doing the HR side of the work. And, at that point, you've done both sides of the house. You're doing a lot, you're leading a lot of the charges on things. I was very proactive. I had a lot of ideas. I wanted to do things differently, still do, and eventually became a head of HR. And that's what I've been doing since around 2016, I think. I think that's right. Yeah.
I love that you mentioned, making sure that the talent that you brought into the organization were having an employee experience that match what they were sold as candidates. I think that that's sometimes it's a pretty big ball drop for many firms that don't prioritize employer branding. And so I'm curious to know, in your role as a chief people officer, what are you focused on the day to day? I would assume, I know employee experience is a huge part of CPO work, but what are your current priorities?
Oh, wow. So on a day-to-day basis, whether I'm focused more on recruitment or the HR side, if you're someone who splits that world in two in that way, which many people do, just depends on what's the order of the day. I'm fortunate to have a very excellent senior level recruiter on my team who I trust to handle, very nuanced, kind of, I wouldn't say difficult conversations. That's not the proper term, but just nuanced situations and ambiguous situations with a lot of skill and dexterity. So that is, can be fairly autonomous, but I still need to be involved for oversight and to kind of make sure that some of those more extra nuanced conversations and situations are handled in the optimal way. HR side of the business for me is about really understanding how people are doing, what their motivations are, what's working for them in the employee experience and what's not. What of those things can we actually impact So I do a lot of chit chats with employees. I'm always trying to make sure I have a few of those on my calendar throughout the week, whether it's talking with a manager or an IC. I work, fortunately, in a smaller company where I can actually do a lot of that. And if I do a few a week, I can kind of do a tour of the whole company over the course of a quarter. So that's a useful activity, I feel. And even when I've worked in larger companies, maybe you can't meet everyone all the time every quarter, but it's still really important to me to be making sure people have direct access to me and making sure that I'm listening to people directly. So that's really my focus starts there. And of course, every week and almost every day is also heavily focused on working with my colleagues on the leadership team at the executive level and determining what direction the business is going, needs to go. How do our HR initiatives support that and drive us in the right direction? So that's sort of an overview. Nothing too crazy, I think. Probably a lot of folks in my role have a similar type of experience day to day. I think what makes this role different for me is that it is a very people first organization more than most that you'd find. I think that's pretty objectively accurate. So we do a lot of wellness programs. We are invested in and concerned about the mental health of our employees in a way that allows me to do a lot more programming around that and be thoughtful about how we're approaching those issues.
So I think it's really great that you're able to be so close to the work and conduct the listening sessions yourself. It's not every day that a chief people officer can actually be in the room, hearing the direct testimonies from employees about what they're wanting, how they're experiencing the workplace. I'm curious to know, maybe from some of your other colleagues who work at larger firms, or maybe your experience working for larger firms in the past, how does that kind of paradigm shift impact how people's strategies are developed, how talent strategies are developed? For someone who may not be able to be in the room themselves, getting that firsthand qualitative data, to someone who maybe has to rely on a third party to conduct those listening sessions and then inform strategy from those transcripts. Is there a difference?
Yeah, it's a great question. I was just talking to a colleague who has a team of about 50, and her day-to-day is very different than mine. It's really more about management and leadership. There's not as much HR strategy per se, more just sort of keeping the wheels on and maintaining what's in place and managing the team that she has to do that work and to kind of bubble up ideas and bring things to her. So there are definitely different ways to do this role, and it does make a difference if you're in a much larger organization, and depending, of course, on their culture around HR. I think that as long as I'm able to at least meet a few people a month at minimum, wherever I am, that's going to be something that I maintain because as you get larger, yes, it becomes more unwieldy, but the game of telephone with this kind of thing is a very real issue that disconnects leadership, top leadership, from understanding what's really going on the ground in their businesses. And there are all kinds of consultancies and different frameworks for getting to know what's actually going on in a business because that disconnect exists. So I'd rather get out in front of that as much as I reasonably can and always have at least
Mhm.
some minimal connection with people doing the work and doing the functional areas of operation or every revenue generating work or whatever it is that that business is built around. So I think it's really important to me. Also, there are other tools, and all these data points sort of need to be put together to paint a picture, to paint a landscape of what the employee experience is. And that's true no matter how small or big you are. You do need surveys. You need other sources of information, including secondhand information about how things are going and what people are telling each other, what folks are talking about. Um, so it's only putting all the data points together that can really give you anything close to a real picture. I
Mhm.
think, though, that maintaining at least some connection to direct firsthand accounts is critical to not getting to the point where your company is so disconnected that you're having to have these major consultancy interventions to figure out what is actually going on because we really don't understand why things are not going the way we want.
In the past year, I'm curious to know what's shifted the most in how you show up as a leader or in what your executive team needs from you.
Hmm. In the past year, well, when I first joined this particular organization, they hadn't had any formal HR leadership prior to that. So the past year, after sort of getting things to a certain state of functionality, sort of a baseline, the past year has been about figuring out what's working with that and sort of understanding how people are experiencing those changes, all the change management of that. How did it actually play out? What's working, what's not, making adjustments and iterating. And working in digital media and tech for a lot of my career, there's certainly iteration as a major part of how those businesses work. So that is a familiar experience, I think, for most people anywhere in those businesses. It's a way of operating that most people feel supportive of because there's a nice feedback loop to that when they see changes made in response to feedback. So that's really how my role has changed in the last year. It's a lot more about understanding the context of where people are now, how the things that we rolled out a year ago are actually working in today's context, be that internal developments in the business, external developments to our environment, all those pieces of the puzzle. We did shift gears at some point. We had some programming planned that didn't really make sense anymore by the time we got to, spring 2025. So we took the resources that were going to go to those programs and moved them over to mental health programs, which I mentioned earlier, sort of simple, straightforward way to take resources that we weren't really going to need in this one area and make them effective for the entire employee population in a way that we knew would be useful.
Many people leaders right now at all levels really are having to learn how to communicate through change because there's so much of it happening in the workplace right now, whether it's restructuring, layoffs, changes in the executive team, or whatever it is. So for you, I know you've advised founders and C-suite leaders through change in your career. What do you see is the biggest mistake that leaders make when communicating through these moments of uncertainty or drastic change?
Not having a good communication plan. So the mistake of bad communication often comes down to not having really thought out who needs to know what when to be the most respectful of people on your team, the most useful and appropriately transparent with people on your team that need to know certain things at certain times, that need to be looped in, informed of decisions being made or a part of decisions being made, and not thinking through that before taking action and starting to blast out communications. It's really a factor to some degree of the action oriented bias versus the sort of like planning bias. Some people tend a little bit more towards one than the other. And for good change management communication, you have to be really balanced there. You have to take the time to plan, but plan quickly so that you can start your communications. I'm saying in terms of a change that maybe you didn't see coming or something that's kind of on the horizon immediately. You haven't decided it yourself. It's been decided for you, right? So those changes, those are the ones that are often most traumatic. So that's what I'm talking about. So being able to plan that out very quickly and then take action on a well thought out plan and following that in the way that you designed it and holding your colleagues to that communication plan. It's very easy to not do that properly. It's very easy to have too much of an action bias and just start telling people things. And then you have all kinds of rumor and conjecture and, well, you didn't tell this person who probably should have known and first or something like that. Or to take all this time planning, and in the interim, people are hearing things and wondering what's really going on, and you're taking too long. You're taking too long to share what's going on.
Absolutely. And it creates such distrust and
Mhm.
it can diminish morale. And
Mhm.
then that's when you start to see employees, thinking, do I need to brush off my resume and start looking at other opportunities? Is my future here secure? When people start wondering what's going on as opposed to there being transparent communication, as transparent as you can be, because, different pieces of information have to come out at the appropriate time. You may not be able to share the entire picture right up front, but keeping employees in the dark is definitely the worst thing that you can do when there's already economic uncertainty that is now pouring over into the workplace.
Oh,
Mm.
sure. Yeah, 100%. And if the listeners don't know, change management is an area that I have been studying since 2007-ish and ended up getting my master's in 2020. I think if I could make up a statistic, 90% of it comes down to good communication.
Right. Absolutely. I appreciate you sharing that. That's very helpful. I'm curious, to know what's one thing that your team is doing really well at when it comes to culture building and your people strategy.
I have to give credit to our CEO, Paul Newrath, and his co-founder, Warren Spector. They founded the studio with a mantra that they created of health, family, work. And that has been a major driving force behind our programs, behind our interactions with employees, behind how we've designed the workplace experience. We are fully remote. That is something that happened after COVID before I joined the team. And that specifically isn't the most I'm not saying that that's the only way to serve employees and have an employee first organization. I just raise that because it's it's a different type of dynamic when you have people all over who don't spend time in the same room together very often. And how do you connect with those people and serve those people in a way that makes sense for them, that works for them? That's not inherent to a remote environment. It's not, oh, you snap your fingers, make a remote environment, and now everybody's just happy all the time and their work-life balance is perfect. You still have to have lots of conversations and work with people and understand what other support needs they have. And for some of our workers, remote is a harder thing for them because they don't have the space from maybe caregiving responsibilities that they have. And so how can we support them and make sure that they actually have still that, again, the good work life balance or what have you. A lot of people, by the way, don't like that phrase. I completely agree with all the controversy surrounding it. I just don't have a better one. I haven't heard a better one. So I'm going to use it as a placeholder.
Right. So, okay, so health, family, work. You've already kind of touched on the wellness programs that you guys offer, which is really great, so important, especially, as so many employees are experiencing mental health challenges, and whether it be from, being a working parent, a caregiver, or physical health issues. Um, I am always interested in what companies are offering when it comes to perks or, benefits packages, things like that, that align to your core values. So, are there any fun or, different things that you offer to employees that kind of align with this mantra of health, family, work, these core values?
Sure. So we've rolled out a few different things, and we have a couple that I can't announce yet that we're hoping to roll out towards the end of the year that I'm really excited about. I think the ones that we rolled out earlier this year are probably the first worth mentioning. One is an annual $1,000 wellness stipend for whatever you might need. Maybe you wanna get a gym membership, maybe that's not your thing. Maybe you wanna just go to the spa. Maybe, like me, you had an unexpected emergency root canal that your insurance did not cover. So that that stipend has been, it's there. It's there for whatever wellness need you may have, no receipts required, and, like, sort of an honor system. So I really believe in that one. I think it's a great program. We also have some other little pieces. We just rolled out a one-time, so it's not annual, it's a one-time lifetime relocation support bonus as well if someone is crossing state lines for a move. And that's a little unusual. We know we recognize that people have different circumstances and different um, contexts that may be really important to them to actually uproot where they are and go somewhere else. And so we provide whatever that may mean for them. We provide some support for that, which is, I think, a little unusual and neat. We have some of the usual things, little stipends for, we have a learning stipend that's also a grant annually. That's probably not as extraordinary, but for a smaller company, I think it's nice that we have something like that. And then my favorite personally that we rolled out this year is in partnership with Onward Care, which is a lovely new company, a program for therapy on demand that our employees can sign up for, and we have a partnership with them that is not forever in this term set, but right now our employees without insurance can get therapy at no charge. So that's outstanding. It is intended as a short-term solution. It's not like a long-term engagement. They will refer you out to someone that your insurance covers for long-term. But I think just that access to very quickly, if you have a crisis situation, if you have something that's weighing on you, a circumstantial matter, or something unexpected comes up, or in your relationship, whatever, that you can just access that immediately and you don't have to file insurance, you don't have to pay anything, you just sign up in the app and you can get a licensed professional on video. So that
Oh,
I think is great.
that is great. I think that's an awesome perk, even just to get people started. And
Exactly.
when you make that time investment in therapy, you often, if you get a good therapist, you can see the value pretty immediately after the first or second session, and it'll compel people to want to continue, through their insurance. But it's great that you offer just some means to get started.
I
Um,
hope so. Hmm.
yeah. Yeah. I've been, well, I would like that if I were an employee. I haven't been one for very long, for a long time rather, but from my conversations with individuals who, work at various companies, I think that a lot of organizations do drop the ball when it comes to mental health and wellness and accessibility to resources to help them cope through everyday life challenges. So you got to start somewhere. I think it's great.
Wonderful.
Um,
Thanks.
as a company, who is growing, we think about sustainable growth, and with growth comes growing pains, and things break. There's friction, challenges at every level of growth. So for you, as you grow as an organization, what are some of the bottlenecks or challenges that you're working through right now?
What bottlenecks? I don't know what you mean. Um, yeah, yeah. So it's something when I joined this company, and this is not the first company that I've helped to grow. It was, I think, 28 people, I want to say. And now we are at about 50 full time with another 15 contract and outsourcers and all kinds. So we've pretty large organization in terms of from where we started a year and a half ago. Um, the reality is there are tons of different shifts. The biggest challenge I have from my role in a company like this is trying to mature the process for various things like whatever performance reviews or these stipend programs. Like people want perks, and yet that creates okay, you have to sort of go get your approval and submit your reimbursement, and those are steps you have to take to participate. That's more layers of interactions, also known as bureaucracy, that I'm always trying to limit. With everything that I implement, I'm always trying to figure out how can I implement with the least amount of friction possible. That's the difficult balancing act when you're rolling out new programs, new things, certainly new technology. Even though technology is supposed to make our lives easier, more often than not, even yes with AI, which I am not opposed to. If anyone's read my recent blog post, you know that, but there are frictions involved in these technologies that require effort on the part of participants. And that's true of any change I implement. There's going to be a different way of behaving that is asked of the employee or my colleagues at the leadership level. And reducing that to the bare minimum is it's a tug of war in those projects. How I can do new things and add in new benefits or add in new functionality without adding in too much new interaction.
Can you share a moment when your leadership was tested? I would love to know what that moment was like, what it taught you about yourself and or your team.
Sure, I think to be frank, anytime we have a performance issue that is not going the direction that we all hope it will be, and we have to come to a difficult decision on letting someone go, I consider that a test of my leadership. It is the worst part of, I think, any HR leader's job, any HR professional's job, because it's not always just a leader that's involved in those things. I have often coached CEOs and other leaders and self-coached myself that at the end of the day, two things are important about those decisions. One is that we cannot harm the rest of the people in the company by continuing a relationship that's not functional. And two is we should not be holding people back from being successful in another environment where they probably would be if that's not here. And it's sort of, not to make it sort of a bizarre comparison, but it's almost like being in a relationship. I don't know if anyone out there has been in a relationship that maybe wasn't functioning the way that you wanted and you're trying to make it work. And at some point you sort of realize, I'm not doing either party any favors by staying in a situation where there's probably a better situation out there for the other person as much as for me as well. But even if you think selflessly about the other person, they should have that chance to go be successful in another relationship. And I think similarly about those situations in the workplace. People, if they're not successful in the role that they've been brought on for, it's often faultless. And I know that's not a common thing. We all want to like put blame on, oh, the company didn't set them up for success, or they just didn't do what they were supposed to do. I don't think either of those things are always the case. And that's kind of a controversial opinion with me, with a little table and a sign, like tell me I'm wrong kind of thing. I think a lot of times it's almost, people really seek this very concrete answer to why it didn't work. And a lot of times it's almost an ineffable chemistry between the company and the person that, yeah, sure, you can look at certain things and say, well, they didn't do this. Oh, the company didn't do that. But why? But why didn't those things happen? Why couldn't that person find it in themselves to do what was being asked? Why was the company not setting them up for this success? It's very surface level, you know? When underneath all that, I think a lot of times it's just ineffable. It's just something that, like chemistry in a relationship, you can't really put your finger on why it didn't work. Because with the way hiring works, if anybody out there is dealing with interview processes, it's a gauntlet. They are making sure that you know what you're doing, that you can do the tests, do all the interviews in the world. Yes, the interview process is not an ideal one, but still, most people don't get hired because they're not good at what they do. It's something else that gets in the way of success. So as a leader, I have to sort of set aside the belief that the best thing for someone is to never let that termination happen, and realize that that's just not true. It's not true for the
Mm,
team, and it's not true for that person. And even though it's the worst part of, again, I believe that it's the worst part of my role. I think
mm.
it's where your leadership really is a test, and of course, handling that in a way that is respectful of everybody involved.
Yeah, I can definitely appreciate that perspective. And I'm thinking about it from where I sit as an SMB founder and CEO, having had to let go of employees before, and it feeling like a deeply personal, emotional thing. And to be quite honest, when I let my first employee go, I was kind of traumatized from it. I carried
Mm-hmm.
it with me for several months, feeling like I had failed them, um, and really knowing that I had kept them on my payroll for way too long, and it cost me from a business perspective. And then I also think about it from the perspective of when I used to be an employee. I have been fired from a job before. And I've had good and bad managers. One, when I got let go from the job I'm thinking about, part of it was because I was just not cut out for the work. It was not my jam. But also, my manager was not very invested in my success. And that was apparent from the onboarding
Yeah.
experience I had.
Hmm.
And so I can empathize, and I think that what I found when you have to let people go, they know it's coming. They can feel the friction. They can feel that things aren't working. And even though it stings and it can be very traumatic from a financial standpoint to have to get back in the job market, sometimes there's a relief that you get because
Mhm.
you may not have had the courage to leave on your own.
Mhm.
That's kind of my take. I'm curious if you've experienced that, in the employees that you've had to have these tough conversations with.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, something that I tell a lot of folks in that conversation who sometimes I'd say like 30% of the time you'll have someone who says, "Well, I need to, wrap up this thing," or like there's this thing that's not done. And I tell them, absolutely not. You need to go take care of yourself. You need to put yourself first and you need to let go of any worry about any of this. You don't owe us anything. You've done everything you can. Please go
Mhm.
take care of yourself. Just focus on you. And you can see that kind of switch usually. Sometimes it takes a minute. But other people, get there pretty quickly, especially if they've been frustrated with the pattern or the lead up. And as you said, hopefully the company's been communicating with them that things aren't going well. So yes, they should have some sense of things. And yeah, there is like, wow, I felt it. Well, for whatever reason, this just wasn't it. And yeah, it's just like it's over. I also will share many of the managers that I coach for these conversations have a similar experience. They lose so much sleep. Similarly to yourself, they lose a lot of sleep. No matter how clear cut the case may be, they lose a lot of sleep. And appropriately, they're putting the focus on that person, not themselves. And that is the right move. It's not about their feelings in that moment for sure. But, what I tell the managers is, "You've made the decision, and I promise you once the conversation is over, you can and should just breathe a sigh of relief. You don't have to think about this anymore. You don't have to decide. You don't have to be in the process of deciding. You don't have to be wondering. It's done. Breathe your sigh of relief." And I think that it is more often than not completely the same feeling on the other side of the table because the
Mhm.
frustration has been there, right? It's the employee is also oftentimes kind of at their wit's end with, "Well, what I'm delivering isn't working." There's friction, 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 like you said.
Absolutely. What's a key people or performance outcome? What KPIs or metrics are you focused on for this upcoming quarter?
So, a metric that I think is imperfect, but that I think is important to do our best to track is quality of hire. I think that's an important one. It's more nuanced than most of our metrics. I also in other organizations, not in this one because we're pre-revenue, revenue per hire. I think those are important. Revenue per employee, I should say. But when we're focused on recruiting, which we've just sort of finished a cycle of, there are all sorts of metrics for that beyond quality of hire in terms of our speed, our quality of experience for people. We have a candidate net promoter score process. Internally, we have our employee ENPS. Those are really important just for tracking trends, understanding the general sentiment of how people are feeling. So those are probably my top picks. I love a dashboard.
Me
I
too.
love a dashboard, so yeah, gives you a good picture. Mhm.
This was such a great conversation, and I appreciate all that you've shared. Just about your process for developing effective people strategies, and the good, the bad, and the ugly of this kind of work,
Mhm.
and just talking about how you, as a leader, and OtherSide Entertainment maintains the heart. When it comes to people leadership and growing an organization while valuing its people. So thank you so much for that. I always like to wrap up my conversations by asking every guest what their one bright idea is, hence our name. A bright
Mhm.
idea could be a mindset shift, a strategy, a tool, some sort of resource that is making a positive difference for you or maybe your team. What would your one bright idea be?
Yeah, this is an easy one for me. I think that the most important skill or trait, whatever you want to call it, that someone can develop is resilience. I
Mm.
really believe in that. It has done so much for me in my life from the time I was a very young kid to now. And in a world where we're moving from, I don't know if you've heard the new term from VUCA to BINA, which go ahead and Google it, y'all. It's I thought VUCA was scary. BINA's worse. But yeah, very chaotic, difficult things in the world externally. We all have families and different worries of our own, hero of our own story kind of thing. Resilience really is the key thing. And I encourage anyone who is interested in that to pursue mindfulness, develop curiosity, which is related to resilience, and really, really a key trait, a key skill.
Amazing. I agree 100%. If I were a guest on my own show, that would probably be my bright idea as well. Awesome. Well, thank you so
Great.
much, Juliette. This was a phenomenal conversation. I appreciate your time.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to Bright Ideas. If today's episode gave you something to think about, here's your next step. DM me the word growth on LinkedIn to start a conversation about how we can help you scale smarter. And if you're a founder, CEO, or senior talent leader with a story to share, I'd love to hear from you. Reach out about joining me on a future episode. And if you don't want to miss future conversations, be sure to follow the show, leave a quick rating, and download your favorite episodes to take them on the go. Your support helps more leaders discover bright ideas. Until next time, be bold, be resilient, be sharp. I'm Desiree B. Sharpe.